Okay. Now, why I didn't do that a while ago, I don't know. Okay. All right, y'all. I guess we're live here. I'm live here. Oh, boy. All right. Going to drink some tea and maybe folks will start coming in. I tried to give a little bit more time to let folks know I was going to do this afternoon, and I'm trying, doing my best. Hey, hey, fish. I am doing very well. Hope you are too. Hey, Hannah. Hey, Kayla and Adam. Okay, well, that looks good. All right. Well, let's see where we can go from here. Y'all have any questions? Anything you want to ask really quick for we have many people in here? I got a couple of things that I'm thinking about talking about. I tried to go live and it didn't want to let me, and I had to go all the way out of it and come back in here. But I hadn't quite figured this YouTube thing out. I'm trying, but I'm getting kind of old, and YouTube is on the computer. So, yeah. Anyway, okay. So I wrote down a couple of things. Wanted to talk about. Oh, look at there. And Mr. Johnson is here. Lots of chanterelles at Springville Park. Y'all should go pick some. Yeah, I know they're everywhere over there, I'm sure. I am allergic to mushrooms. So I am a little afraid to go out and forage in the wild and pick mushrooms. I don't know. In the wild, they may be fine, may not bother me at all, but I'm scared to find out. But I'm sure Tim would love it because he does like mushrooms and he's not allergic. So I don't know. I'm just a little, but I would like to go back to Springville and just wander around a little bit because I love going to Springville and just going over there makes me happy. It takes me back in time. It is a terrible allergy. I've been watching this. They have the new, instead of drinking coffee, they have this, it's mushrooms and it's made into like a coffee and it's supposed to be ultra healthy for you. But, I'm just, you know, I tell you what, if I could just get the courage, I might give it a try. Yeah, I know. And I know, you know, I drink organic milk because I cannot drink the regular milk from the store. I've always had a problem with the regular milk at the store, so I would drink organic. So, because regular milk it makes me sick. It causes me stomach issues. It's terrible. But I could drink milk straight from the cow. When my granddaddy had a cow, we drank cow's milk all the time. Start small and cook them very well for your first time. Hey, Kim, I'm glad you found us, or you found me. Tim's busy. He's doing other things. So this is a Tammy chat because Tammy's always willing to chat. You just ask my kids. They say I make friends everywhere I go. Last week, we went to Zebulon, Georgia. And, it wasn't my fault. Tim took me in the bookstore. We went to the bookstore. So Tammy made friends. And he picked about it later. He said that I make friends everywhere I go. My kids say I make friends everywhere I go because I'm willing to talk to people. I want to know stories. I want to know what's going on. In Zebulon, there was a lady there telling us where everything was at. She showed us how to get to that school that we put up on Friday. She's the reason we found that old abandoned school. And then she told us about the church too. So if you talk to people, you find out things that you may or may not find on your own. And we may have found those things, but we may not have if we hadn't talked. Or I hadn't talked. So, yeah, I was outside the store. You'd go in the store in the front. It was a bookstore, and the name of the bookstore was A Novel Experience. If you're ever in Zebulon, go to the bookstore, A Novel Experience. They were very kind people. We had a wonderful day in Zebulon. But I walked through with the lady who was talking to me, and we went out the back door. It goes all the way through the block. We went out the back door, and Tim lost me. So he was looking everywhere for me because he didn't know where I had gone off to because I had left him up in the front in the inspiration section and I had gone out and was talking with Tina, and I was having a good conversation with her, and she was telling me where things were. So I like to make friends. I like to talk to people. And she and I had a lot in common. So I was thinking, generally what I do, because I don't like to have a lull, a silence, and the messages move slow. I don't know if they move slow because I put them on that, or if they just move slow. How many books do you own? We need a bookshelf tour. Oh, wow. How many books do I own? Do I have to count the Kindle too? Because if I count the Kindle, well, okay. My middle daughter and her husband gave me a gift card for Amazon for Mother's Day. And I went yesterday online, and that's what I bought. I bought an Agatha Raisin book, the latest Agatha Raisin book. I've read all of them. And I bought the last one that has just come out in 2024. And I'm thinking about going ahead and buying the one that's coming out in October of this year, going ahead and pre-ordering it. How many books do I own? At one time, when my children were young and they were in school, there was an old trailer up beside my grandmother. And I had one room that I had made into a library. I had thousands of books at that time. I do not have that many anymore. Tim and I live in a relatively small house, but I have a bookshelf in my room. It's stacked from top to bottom. He has a bookshelf over here in the corner, and it's pretty well full. And then I have my grandmother's china cabinet, and I have my most special books in my grandmother's china cabinet. I don't have dishes in the glass part. I have my most special books. I have also from my middle daughter, a signed autographed copy of an MC Beaton book. She's basically been one of my favorite writers as an adult, and she passed away in 2019. But I have an autographed book by her. So if I had to guess, I don't know. I don't guess. I can't guess. I have all kinds of books. I have a very high interest level. I read a lot of books. In fact, I'm reading 3 books right now, counting the MC Beaton that I just started yesterday. I'm reading a book, how to not be liked by everybody, how to handle it when people don't like you, because people don't always like you, and I didn't know that, but I find that out. But anyway, I'm reading that, and then I'm reading one about the AI. That's the AI and where it's all coming from. It's a religious book. I think it's a Jonathan Cahn book. So I got all 3 of those going at the same time right now, because I learned how to multitask with books. When I was, oh my goodness, is Ethan in trouble already? I lost my whole train of thought. You say you didn't. I don't even see the comment. You've made me lose my train of thought. Oh, okay. Was it that bad? Okay. Oh, okay. Kim says she's never been a reader. It's great when someone likes it. Well, see, when I was a kid, and you've heard this story a million times because, well, I don't know. I've read this story a million times. Let me put it that way. When you move a lot and you don't have a lot of friends and you turn inward, I read every literature book I ever had in school without, by the time we came to reading it in class, I had already read it because I read every story there was. And when I got to the school that I went all the way through high school, I went to 14 schools, 1st to 8th grade, 14 schools. And yeah, I know I'm talking with my hands. I do that. So when I got to the school that I went to in 8th grade, then I went all the way through high school at the same school. And the first thing that they kept the literature books locked up like prisoners in a closet, and I didn't have access to my literature book. But that was okay, because when I got into high school, I had a lot of friends, and I made it. It was better then after I had a lot of friends. I didn't need to depend on books quite as much. However, I still read. I just read all the time. Fish says, I only have like 7 physical books now, but thousands in my Google Play books. Yeah, similar to Kindle. Physical books got to where it was taking up too much space in the house. That's my exact thing. I do take books and put them in the little free libraries now. And that was not easy to do because books were my friends and I would reread them. And Kim, no, my daddy was not military. My daddy was a preacher. There. So we moved all the time. We moved all over Georgia. Before, my granddaddy was a preacher. We moved as far up north as Virginia. And then with my daddy, we moved to South Carolina. And we landed in Alabama. In 1983, my granddaddy had a heart attack, which is one of the things I was going to tell y'all about. I'm going to talk to y'all about. My granddaddy had a heart attack in 1983. I was 13 years old. And it was the biggest event in my life at that point because we were pretty sure, we were scared he was going to die. And that's when we moved to Alabama. And after we got to Alabama, it's true, I stayed on the same school district, stayed the same school district. However, I could take you there, and I will probably do that one day, and I can point out all the different places we lived. And yeah, I'm not exaggerating. I can probably pull 15 up. Yeah, probably 15 pretty easy. And that's because we moved all the time. We moved all the time. And then after I got married, I kind of stayed stable for years at a time. I was going to show y'all, though, talking about my granddaddy. Let me see. Oh, go that way. Birmingham Arts Journal, Volume 12, Issue 4. I have a published piece in here about my granddaddy. And if y'all want to listen to it, I'll read it to you. This is not my only published piece, but this was one that always... My granddaddy loved to laugh, and he loved to laugh at me. Okay. Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate that. So let's see if I can get enough light and move this book far enough back that I can see it. And it's called What I Remember Most About Brookwood Hospital. Brookwood Hospital was pretty much a new facility in Birmingham, Alabama in 1983. Not so new anymore, but it's still there. It was springtime 1983, and I was outside of Brookwood Hospital in Birmingham, Alabama, looking through a pile of rocks, trying to find just the right one to present to my grandfather. I finally found one that I thought was worthy. It was smooth, flat, and round. Using a black permanent marker, I wrote Brookwood Hospital, Paul, 1983. For some reason, I thought he needed a souvenir to remember his time there. Paul had a heart attack earlier that year and was at Brookwood for quadruple bypass heart surgery. Over the past 2 months, I had been awakened in the middle of the night twice to rush to see him for what I was told would probably be the last time. Now, waiting to see him again, I was nervous and excited. I loved my grandfather and could not imagine life without him. He was fun and funny. I still have that rock, and I do still have that rock. But that is not what I remember most about Brookwood Hospital. The waiting room was cool and bright. It had colorful abstract paintings on the walls. Brookwood, built in 1973, was more modern than what I was accustomed to. Hospitals had always seemed dark and forbidding to me, a place to die. This one, however, almost seemed cheerful with all the different colored walls and plants everywhere. But that is not what I remember most about Brookwood Hospital. I went into the room with my rock, all smiles, hoping to cheer Paul up. The room was larger than the one he had been in at the local hospital. The walls were painted a pretty yellow, not the dingy white I was accustomed to in hospitals, but that is not what I remember most about Brookwood Hospital. It did not take me long to realize he didn't need my feeble attempt to cheer him up. He had his own way of doing that. He had lost a lot of weight and his face looked sunken, but I realized that was because he wasn't wearing his false teeth. With a mischievous sparkle in his eyes and a smile creeping across his face, toothless, he said, "Tammy Lee, look out that window and tell me what you see." After that introduction, I was almost afraid to look. I had no doubt there was Nothing there to hurt me, but he was way too happy about the prospect of my looking, and I was way too suspicious. I had fallen victim to his pranks before, but I was so happy he was alive and smiling that I felt obliged to follow his command and tell him what I saw. A statue of the Roman god Vulcan stood outside Paul's window. Vulcan is the god of iron, and the city of Birmingham was established by and relied heavily on mining coal and limestone in the beginning. The statue, which stands 56 feet high, towers protectively over the city. To put it into perspective, how big the sight of what awaited my young eyes was the Vulcan weighs 120,000 pounds. That is a lot of man. Unfortunately, he was facing away from Paul's window, wearing only an apron that covered only one side, and it wasn't the side I was looking at. I saw a huge iron naked backside. That is what I remember most about Brookwood Hospital. I blushed. Paul broke out laughing. He was cheering himself up at my expense. That is disgusting. It only made him laugh harder. Once when I was very small, I had asked Paul why the All Jug Band on Hee Haw was called the All Jug Band. He laughed just as hard that day, too. As a child, I made it a habit to rush over and cover his eyes when a bra commercial came on TV. I was a modest child. He had many opportunities to laugh at me. The more I protested this horrendous sight, the more he laughed, which, looking back, had to be hard on him. They say laughter is the best medicine, and I guess it is, because every time he laughed, he had to hold a pillow against his chest to keep from pulling his stitches out, but he kept laughing anyway. Finally, I gave in and laughed too. Everybody who came to see him was told the same thing I was, and everybody looked at that big butt before leaving. Some were amused and some were disgusted like me, but all looked, and Paul laughed every time. Paul asked me if I wanted to get a closer view and visit Vulcan Park before going home. No. I never did go to the park. Paul succumbed to his heart problems 11 years after his surgery, and 2 years after that I moved to a little town called Moody near Birmingham. It was while I was there in 1999 that Vulcan got his makeover. He was removed and did not return until 2004 when he was fully restored to his former naked derriere glory. I moved from Moody back to my piece of Paul's land 16 years ago, and I haven't seen the Vulcan since, but I will always remember the first time I saw him mooning all of Birmingham in Paul's hospital room. My grandfather loved to laugh. He never got tired of telling people about the first time I saw the Vulcan statue. It always made him laugh, and I hope wherever he is, it still does. So that was my story. And I have missed some of these comments. I see nothing. Kim, I see nothing wrong with being a preacher's daughter. I don't have a problem being a preacher's daughter. I always have been. And Tammy says, the best writers are avid readers. You should write a book and publish it. You know, I get told that a lot. Actually, I get told that by Hannah, who's in here, who says my life is like a Dickinson novel. And it kind of is. And it's from start to finish, there's a lot of twists and turns and a lot of ups and downs. And I've learned a lot. And I've come a long way. I appreciate that, Kim. I like to share the stories, and I read that one, but if I have any more stories, they'll have to come off the top of my head. But I've always loved to think about that time when he was there and looking up and seeing the Vulcan. The first time, it was a shock because I had no idea what I was looking at. When I first looked out the window, I didn't know what I was going to see. That was great. May the Vulcan continue to move Birmingham. Well, that's what he is. And they talk, people come out every few years. They get together and they get all outraged. And they say, we need to put on something to hide the backside of Vulcan. They're not going to. But why would you? Just let it go at this point. I read a book called The Southern Sisters Mysteries, and there's only 7 of them. And I own all 7. And I read them over and over again. They're by a woman named Ann George. She died way too soon. She started writing way too late. She talks about the Vulcan all the time. I think one of the reasons I was drawn to her writing is that she talked about Birmingham. And I know most of the places she talks about, the Alabama Theater. Never been inside of it. Never heard the Wurlitzer. but I'm going to one day, I hope, if they don't get rid of it. And why would they get rid of it? It's a part of history that needs to stay. And I think I'd enjoy the Alabama Theater more even than the Vulcan in Vulcan Park. But I'm willing to go to Vulcan Park now if I ever got back up that direction. And sometimes we do. We've been to Birmingham once on this channel, and we made a video about a graveyard up there, and it was pretty neat. Well, hi there, son. Y'all, I got my sweet tea tonight. I don't want to drink coffee this late. Not because it keeps me up, because coffee don't keep me awake, but because coffee gives me a little bit of indigestion, and I would just rather not have coffee. So that's why I'm drinking sweet tea, and hopefully it'll just go easy on me. Okay. So this week, Jeff Campbell, YouTuber Adam the Woo, his dad was a preacher, and Adam moved a lot too. Yeah, I know. You know, Jeff, me and Tim, we met Adam. We did a video with Adam. And I knew his daddy was a preacher. I also knew he was homeschooled, which I was not homeschooled, but my children were. I was also married to a preacher. It's just preachers in my bloodstream, I guess. I don't know. I was watching a video on YouTube last week, though. You know, they've done away with the penny. They've decided that we're going to get rid of the penny. I agree, Kim. It's a shame that folks don't like history and appreciate it. Well, to each his own. Some people like and appreciate hot rod cars. I don't mind looking at them, but I can't tell you what kind of engine's in them. But I am definitely a history buff, and that's just who I am. But I was watching a video last week, and it was about the penny. You know, Donald Trump has done away with the penny. And I don't like that. But he said that it costs 3 cents to make a penny. So, okay. All right. I understand. Okay. I can understand that. But I watched a video, and it said there's a reason to get rid of the penny. Because copper is going to be in high demand in the future. So I'm going to tell y'all exactly what that video said, and I believe it's true, and I'm going to start doing it because they got a whole bunch of pennies. Any penny from 1982 and before is copper. So if the United States is going to they're going to pull all the pennies back, and they've already been doing this because, you know, we're flooded with newer pennies. They're already saving the copper. Maybe we ought to save some copper too. So I'm going to start looking through my pennies and find those. And anything before 1982, I'm going to hold on to it because, hey, if the United States wants copper, I figure I should probably want copper too. So that's what I'm going to say about the penny. And as far as if it costs 3 cents to make a penny, it does not make any sense to make a penny. I can believe that. I can say, okay, I understand that. But it kind of seems to me like we got hyperinflation, and if they're getting rid of the lowest denomination of money, that must mean that the hyperinflation is just going to continue to get worse. And then there's another one that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about. Well, Kim, let's just, can't hurt to save them, can it? I mean, there's been lots of money that, I have a half dime. And a lot of people, when you say half dime, they see you mean a nickel. I don't mean a nickel. I mean, I have a half dime. It's half a dime. So it's worth 5 cents, but it's a half dime. And it's from 1890 something. I need to go look at that. I should have brought it in here. I could have showed y'all. My granddaddy, the same one who laughed at me about Vulcan's big rear end, he had it as a preacher. He had a congregation in Virginia. And there was this one old lady who couldn't, she didn't feel like she could give enough money. She didn't feel like she was helping support the church. So she had 3 half dimes. She gave them to my granddaddy. And my grandparents had 3 granddaughters. I'm the oldest, and there's 2 others. And my granddaddy went and had those half dimes set in 18 karat gold necklaces. So we each have a half dime and an 18-karat gold necklace from my granddaddy. And one day I'm going to pass that along to my oldest daughter. She remembers my granddaddy. She's the only one of my children who actually remembers my pa, but she remembers pa. Yeah, Fish. I know a lot of places are going cashless, and I don't know, they still say cash is king. And I try to keep a little bit. I don't know. I have a lot of stories about my granddaddy. I guess more than I always think about. But when we lived in Virginia, we went to church in we went to churches in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. We went to churches around there because we've always gone a long ways to go to churches. And we went to a church one time, and I think it was in Pennsylvania, but you'll have to forgive me. I was 6 years old. But I remember it was an old church, and it actually had a loft in the back, and they explained to me that's where the slaves sat. They built that for the slaves to sit up there. So I wanted to go up there, and they did. They let me go up there, but they wouldn't let me stay because they were worried about the structural, whether it was good enough for me to be up there. So I didn't stay up there for long, but while we were there, we were having church, and a tour bus pulled up out in the graveyard, and all the people got out. And I was looking out the window because I'm just going to tell you the preaching was boring. I'm 55. I can be honest with you. When I was 6, preaching was boring. So I was looking out the window, and these people they went to this specific grave, and they would get down on the ground and they'd put their ear to the ground. I thought, that is so weird. So after church was over, we were having lunch because that's how we did things. We would have lunch at church. And it was cold enough, I believe we had it inside at that day. But anyway, I said, why were they doing that? So somebody explained to me that a little boy who died in the 1800s had he had swallowed a pocket watch. He choked on the pocket watch. Anyway, it was stuck in his throat. And people believed that if you bent down to the ground and put your ear to his grave, you would hear it ticking. And me at 6 years old, I looked up and I said, don't you think that watch would have run down by now? Who's winding that watch? I know now. It was a ghost story. You're just supposed to believe it because it's supposed to be a ghost, and the ticking just goes on. But anyway, when I was 6, I didn't understand who was winding the watch. So that's another one of my granddaddy's stories. And actually, sometime about 4 or 5 years ago, there's a channel on here called The Wandering Woodsman. That's a good name for the story. Called The Wandering Woodsman. And he actually told that story, and he showed that church. It's no longer used as a church, I don't think, but he showed the church that I was at church at that day. And I haven't seen any of that. I hadn't gone back to Virginia. I'd love to go back one day. I know it was we went one day, and I think this was in West Virginia. And we were on a farm, and the man who owned the farm, the family that was there, he took us out to the well, and we got water out of the well and drank the water. And that was the coldest water I have ever drank in my life. It was really neat. And I didn't know, we've had well water in Alabama, but it wasn't significantly cold like that was up in West Virginia. That was some cold water. I have to figure it was because it was running down through the mountains where the snow was melting. But I don't know. I remember driving up there, and there was just battlefield after battlefield after battlefield. You saw battlefields everywhere. And as you're driving down the road, there would be battlefields and lines all over where the guns were set up, where the fences were set up to tell you which side was where. I'm looking at my notes. I do have notes. When it gets quiet and I get into a lull, it kind of bothers me. And I don't want to bore y'all. So I feel like I should continue to talk. Where are you at, Kim? If you don't mind, you don't have to tell me. I'm just asking. I've never been west beyond the Mississippi River. We crossed the Mississippi River into Louisiana, turned around, went back home. Not bored, just listening to some interesting stories. Thank you, Fish. St. Charles, Missouri. I have never been there. I have gone north to Ohio. I've been to Ohio. And I've been north to Pennsylvania and Virginia and over that way. And North and South Carolina. I've been all up and down the East Coast, but I want to get on up to Maine, go further up. And I'd love to go to Missouri. When I was little, my uncles worked in Missouri, and my aunt and uncle lived there for a little while. I want to visit 49 of the 50 states west of St. Louis. St. Louis. I'm sorry. I said St. Louis. That's a different one. That's a different place. St. Louis, Missouri. Okay. Which state's St. Louis in? Because there is one in St. Louis. Or am I just completely? Meet me in St. Louis. Where's that, Hannah? What state's that St. Louis in? That was one of her favorite movies growing up. What do you mean you don't know? It was one of your favorite movies growing up. St. Louis is a baboon. No, that's King Louis. Too late to say you're sorry now. I'm sorry. Seen that movie one time. I just like the song. You owned that movie. Am I wrong? Am I completely wrong? Am I misremembering? Is this a Mandela effect, a personal Mandela effect? That's Missouri from the World's Fair. Okay. All right. Well, at least I'm right that you owned the movie. Okay. That's good. It's good to know. All right. So have you ever been to the Darden House in Opelika, home of the first African-American doctor in Opelika? I haven't. There was a funeral home, though, that I wanted to go to, but they tore it down before we went. And it was a beautiful old house. Okay. It is set in St. Louis, Missouri, though. Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I needed was for you to ask the AI and let it tell you. I can't do that. I'm on the computer, and I can't leave this. I probably could. I don't know how to. Ward's Funeral Home, yes. That house was fantastic. I wish someone would have preserved it. I know. I wish somebody would preserve all of them. I wish I could preserve all of them because I would. I can't preserve any of them, though. So I just have to hope that somebody decides to take care of them. But okay. So when I first moved to Alabama, we lived in a little place called Beulah. I was 13 years old, and we moved back because of my granddaddy's heart attack. Because my grandmother couldn't drive, so Mama had to drive my grandmother everywhere she had to go. In fact, Mama and my little brother stayed in Birmingham while my granddaddy was at Brookwood. And this event happened. He had his heart attack in March. So we moved in March, and by the time it was summertime, he'd had that quadruple bypass, and he was at home. But, that set off a chain of, for years, he was in and out of the hospital because you're scared of everything that happened. So that summer was my favorite summer as a kid. I was 13 years old and had all my cousins. We were all, I was the oldest of the group that I was in. We had different groups of cousins because we have a lot of cousins. I have hundreds, that's not an exaggeration, of cousins that I actually know. But that year, we spent the summer, we went to Beans Mill Creek every day to go swimming. And we drive down this little dirt road that took us around to a sandbar. And we had this tree that stuck out at an angle out over the water. And we had nailed steps. Somebody had, I'd say we, but somebody had nailed steps up to it, 2x4s, pieces of 2x4s. And we would climb the tree and grab the rope, and we'd swing. We'd go off the rope. And that's how I spent my whole 13th summer. We would go off the rope every day. All we did. We would climb up, swing out, drop 10 feet into the water, swim to the sandbar, get out, go back around, climb a tree, and do it. That's what we did all day long. And that was very cold water, which would keep you cool all day long. And we didn't have air conditioning then. But the first time that I went off the rope, I was scared to death. So I climbed up, and we had all these people behind me who would just go round and round and round. So I had 4 or 5 people behind me, and there was this little boy who was, 3 years younger than me. And I was standing there holding the rope with my hand, thinking about what I was about to do, and I chickened out, and I made everybody back out of the way. And then I climbed down the stairs. It was humiliating. Went over to the sandbar and sat down, put my feet in the water. I sat there and I wondered, and I weighed it back and forth, and I watched them swing out, I watched them drop, and I watched them swim back up to the sandbar, and I thought, that looks like so much fun. I want to do it. So I got my nerve up. I went back up, got my cousin, older cousin, much older cousin. He was grown, had children, wife, children of his own. And he said, just say 1, 2, 3 and go. So I said 1, 2, 3, and I didn't go. And I said 1, 2, 3, and I didn't go. And then I said 1, 2, 3, and I went. And halfway out, the same cousin, who was supposed to be an adult, yelled, snake! So I had a mild heart attack myself between the rope and the water. He was just joking. But he did that all the time, drove me crazy. An alligator. But still, I lived. I held my breath. I took in a deep breath. You went under, you'd hit the sand at the bottom, and you'd shoot back up to the top. And then I swam like crazy because he had screamed snake. So I was swimming like crazy to get back to the sandbar so I could get out and get away from the snake. And then they were just all laughing and laughing and laughing. But after that, I went right back up that tree, and I swung off that rope again. And I swung off that rope all the time. And I did that every day my entire 13th summer. All right, fish. I don't rope swing anymore. My last time, the river current was too strong, and I drifted about a mile or 2 downstream. The rocks tore my legs up. Oh, my goodness. Well, the thing about Bean's Mill is, if you drifted downstream, you would hit, because I've walked down it before in the middle of the creek, you would hit the dam. So if the current was that fast, it would have took you over the dam, which would have been a really bad thing. But I have walked all the way down from the rope. And the water in Beans Mill Creek, it really doesn't get very deep. Besides that spot but would swing, because the water there was probably 8 to 10 feet deep, because you would go all the way down. And when you hit the sand, you pop back up. But I don't rope swing anymore either. I hadn't done that since I was 13. I don't think I've been back to a place to swing off a rope like that. And then when I married my first husband, we went to one of the creeks, and they had a rope set up, and everybody was swinging off that rope, but he didn't want me to do it. So because I didn't want to upset him, I didn't do it. So anyway, but that was the most fun thing about my 13th summer, was going off that rope swing, because I hadn't lived anywhere like that. An amazing summer fun story. It was amazing, and it was fun. And I had all my cousins around. Your best friends are your cousins, and I had all these cousins who were my friends, and somebody had come by in a truck, and they'd, oh, hey, we're going to the creek, you want to go? And we just hop on the back of the truck. I don't even know if we changed clothes. We had on cut off shorts and t-shirts, and we'd probably just jump on there just like we were. I don't even know if I owned a bathing suit that year. And we'd go to the creek, and we would swim. And it was a lot of fun. Now, my cousins, I had a couple of crazy cousins. And one of them was especially crazy. And he would climb up the tree past where the rope was tied, and he would jump off. And, of course, I got dared to do that. So I went up to where the rope went off, and then you had the middle of the tree, and then he would climb all the way to the top, which was just insane. And he would jump out of the top. Well, I decided I'd get my nerve up, and I got to the first level after the rope, and I jumped off there. And then I thought that was no fun. I didn't like it, and I'm just going to keep swinging off the rope. So that's all I did, because I've always been one of these kind of people that if I don't like it, I'm not going to do it again. It's not fun. Why am I going to do it again? I was the one who didn't ride the roller coasters. Went to Six Flags every year, and I'd ride the mine train, because I'd ride the mini mine train, and I'd ride the mine train. But I didn't go to the bigger roller coasters because I was afraid of the Scream Machine. Because when I was about 6, That's when we went to Six Flags the first time, and my mama rode the Scream Machine, and she never got on another ride. I mean, she didn't ride anything after that. So I guess that was stuck in my head, and I was scared to ride the Scream Machine. But then when I was a teenager and I went up there with my friends, you have a little more peer pressure. You kind of do things you wouldn't ordinarily do. So I rode the Z-Force. And oh my gosh, I loved the Z-Force. I rode it over and over and over again. But then after I grew up and I married my first husband, we went up there with some of my cousins, and they wanted us to ride with them. So I rode the Ninja. I think it was called the Ninja. But before I rode that ride, I timed it. I looked at my watch. I knew it took 1 minute and 45 seconds to ride that ride. From start to finish was 1 minute and 45 seconds. And 1 minute was going up the first hill. And it was a terrible ride, and I hated it. But I rode it. I never rode it again either. But after that, my husband wanted me to ride the Scream Machine. He wanted me to ride the Scream Machine so bad. And I thought, well, hey, I can handle it. So I went and got on the Scream Machine, y'all. I hadn't rode anything since. I'm done. I don't want to ride anything. I don't want to ride anything at all. And I was in my 20s then, too. I will ride rides at Disney World, which is something I don't do very often because I don't go. The last time I went was, what year was it? Let me think. What year did we go? 2009. It's the last time I went to Disney World. I think, Kim, we all had some crazy cousins. I know I had some crazy cousins. I'm sure I did some crazy things too. I guess the craziest thing I ever did, and I have made a video about this. Y'all may remember this story. You may not. I don't know. But there was this road in Lee County called Smedley Road, and it was known for where devil worshippers got together and had their get-togethers and did whatever they did. And oh, that's cool. Me and my crazy friends, decided we'd go down this road. And somehow we ended up going in my car. I had a little Toyota Corolla to sell. And I know there's a Toyota Corolla and there was a Toyota. It is a dirt road, and it's still a dirt road, and it's still there. Me and Tim went down it not too very many years ago. And there were devil worshippers in the baseball field because it was the eeriest. The 80s. Oh. We didn't see anybody on that road, y'all. It's me and 4 of my friends, and we only had one boy, and he was the oldest of us. And I asked him, could he drive a straight shift? And he said yes, and he did pretty good. So I handed him my keys, and somehow I ended up in the back seat. That was really weird. But anyway, me and 2 of my friends was in the back seat, and one of those friends had a Bible in her hand. She had a Bible. She was going, she's going to handle it if we run into anything that we shouldn't have run into. When we turned on the road, there were these red reflectors to the left, and there was one house there. There was a trailer there. There wasn't nothing else on the road that I remember. As far as we went, it runs from Opelika to Lafayette. And when we turned on the road, there was that one place, and then after that, we didn't see anything for a while. It was the middle of the night. I mean, this was a Friday night. It was like 11 o'clock at night. We were just, it was stupid. It was dumb. Looking back now, it was a dumb thing. And my mama didn't find out about it till I was about 35 years old because I didn't tell her. I didn't tell anybody except me and my friends talked about it. Fish. Only thing I can tell you is that you go out 431 from Opelika. You go between Opelika High School and Southern Union, and you go past the fairgrounds on the left. And then on the right, there is an old store. It's been abandoned for years, and the road's beside it. And there's a lot of houses on it now. We're headed down that road, though, and we got past the first place where there was a house, and we looked over to the right, and there was a church. And it was, all the windows were gone. It was just a white clapboard church, just a regular old white church. All the windows were gone, and the whole church was graffitied all over the outside. It was terrible. It was horrible. And, we kept going. We kept going. So we go down the road a couple of miles. It's supposed to be 18 miles long, and I think it is. It's a very long road between Opelika and Lafayette. So we're headed down the road, and over to the left, we come across this field. It's a completely open field. There's one tree in the middle of it. It has been stripped of all bark. bottom to top, stripped of all bark. And there was a mist hanging about 4 to 5 feet off the ground, and it was creepy as all get out. And we figured that's where they would get together. And we don't know why we figured that, but the legend was when you're going down the road, you cross 3 bridges, but when you turn around and come back, you only cross 2 bridges. So we were going to find out if it was true, because you got to find these things out, and inquiring minds want to know. So we're going down the road, and we crossed the first bridge, and there was really nothing on the road. We didn't really see much. There was the old church, there was the field, and it was creepy, and we were all kind of hyped up because we were like 17 years old. Oldest of us was 18. So we're going down the road, and of course, my best friend, who was smarter than me, stayed home. It was the crazy ones that went. We're going down the road, though, and this was the thing that happened. It was the best thing about it. We're going down the road. It's nighttime. It's dark. We're all sitting back there. My friend's over here holding on to her Bible, and we're kind of shaking, and we're laughing and being silly and scared and all, because when you're scared, you laugh. And all of a sudden, a rabbit ran across the road, and our fearless leader who was driving screamed like a 3-year-old little girl, scared us all to death. Everybody in the car screamed. We all screamed. We just screamed. And then it was a rabbit. And then we all just laughed because of all the pressure that built up. So then we just dissolved into laughter. So we keep on going. We cross the second bridge. And these are rickety old bridges too, y'all. This is a dirt road. And these rickety old bridges, y'all have seen some of these Alabama bridges on these Alabama dirt roads. Tim can't stand to run into a bridge on an Alabama dirt road because he knows we're going to go across it. And it worries him. But anyhow, we get to the third bridge. And when we get to the third bridge, our fearless leader goes, I'm turning around right now. We're going to cross this bridge, and I'm turning around right now. I'm done with this. I'm through with this. I'm tired of it. And really, if we'd have gone about a mile and a half further, we'd have come out on 431 over there close to Lafayette. But we were young and stupid. So he pulls up into what looks like a driveway, but it's not because there's no house there. And there's a picture nailed to a tree, and it's a cross with flames around it. And at that time, we didn't realize that was the Methodist Church's logo. And we thought that the devil worshipers had put up this cross on fire. But we did turn around, and we did come back out, and nothing else happened. But that was quite an adventure when I was 17 years old. And like I said, I didn't tell my mama until I was probably 35 years old. And I don't remember why I told her then. It was a dumb thing to do, and we were dumb kids, and we shouldn't have been on that road because things really did happen on that road that were not good. And we were watched over that night because nothing happened except a rabbit ran out in front of us, and we like to wet our pants, but that's all that happened. It was crazy, yeah. So now y'all have got my stories from way back when. Let me go back and see what I wrote down here, because I did take notes, because I said, you know what? Oh, I know what we need to talk about. Y'all tell me, has the bald eagle always been the national bird, the United States national bird? When did it become the national bird? Do you remember that? Do you remember in school learning that, or is it just me? Because this is a fun one. Franklin wanted it to be a turkey. You're absolutely right. I wrote that down. And because Benjamin Franklin said that the turkey was more useful. And he lobbied for the turkey to be the national bird because it was more abundant and useful. But the bald eagle won because it was more regal and becoming of our young nation. So do you remember that the bald eagle is our national bird? Or am I wrong? Has it been something else? Or have we even had a national bird all these years? Because, yeah. I've always thought Benjamin Franklin was probably right, but I do understand, we're all turkeys in America, right? What I remember is what what was right there. I remember that the national bird was the bald eagle. Went to Callaway Gardens on Easter, and during the raptor show, a bald eagle flew over the pond. They have to put the falcons up and gave us a lecture on the bald eagle. It was cool. I've seen that show, Fish, and the owl flew right over me. They tell you not to move. They say don't move. And I'm sorry, there's an owl coming right at my face. My grandson's sitting beside me, and I went over like that, and he went over right on top of me. And that thing, I felt the wind from its wings as it went over our head. Because I'm sorry, I tried not to move. What I enjoyed most about the Callaway Gardens raptor show, though, was the vultures. Because they had one named Vinny the vulture, and he came out and he put on a show. After it was over with, he didn't want to be put up. So he stayed down, and he would put his wings out. You ask him to put his wings out, he spread his wings out. He had a good time. He was the story about Vinny, though. I don't know if you heard this story or not, but the story about Vinny, they keep treats in their pockets that they give the birds, and they had a pocket on their shirt. And the trainer, or whatever they are there, he had gone in one day and his shoe was untied. So he had to bend over to tie his shoe. And when he did, the treats all spilled out, and Vinny got the treats. And then Vinny thought that since the trainer bent over because his shoe was untied, he decided to start untying the trainer's shoes. So every time the trainer would come in, Vinny would start snatching at his shoes to get his shoes untied, so he'd have to bend over. Kim, Callaway Gardens is in Pine Mountain, Georgia. Callaway family opened it up. I don't know what year exactly Callaway Gardens came into play, but I know that when my mama was little, she went on a field trip there. So that would have been in the 50s. But Callaway Gardens, we've done a lot of videos about Callaway Gardens too. Tim and I get a season pass every year. It's the only season pass we get, but we get one that covers us and our grandchildren. And we go up there, and they have a beach. They have a lake with a beach. And they have a lot of different shows throughout the year. Yeah, Vinny the vulture got him some treats, and he was a lot of fun. He was fun to watch. And when you tell him to hold his arms out, or his wings out, he'd do it. And it was cool. Callaway Gardens, though, was one of our favorite places to go. And this year we went early in April before the azaleas had bloomed. And then we promised to go back, but then the azaleas bloomed and were gone before we actually got back. Jason, found your channel a while back. I enjoy watching y'all explore the old towns and buildings around the area. Well, I'm just going to be honest with you. That's our absolute favorite thing to do. And right now, Tim's researching where we're going to go tomorrow. I have no idea where we're going. I don't know if we're going to Georgia. We're going to Alabama. I don't know. We're right here on the Chattahoochee River, so we can go either direction. So he's out there. He's in there looking for something for us to do tomorrow. And that's my favorite thing. I love to go to these old towns, and it doesn't matter if they're all the way there or halfway there or deserted. It doesn't make a difference. I love them, every one. I don't guess there's been a small town we've been to yet that I've thought I wouldn't want to go back. And if I had my way, I would leave the city and move to one of those small towns a little further away from the really big city, because further away you get from Atlanta, the quieter, more peaceful it is. You should go to the Darden House. It's got a historic marker, which reminds me, I've always wondered why the Spring Villa House doesn't have a historic marker. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, though, isn't it? Spring Villa. The Darden House, I'll have to look that up. I don't know. We'll have to see. That wouldn't be very far away. That'd be kind of close. We are running out of places it's close to go to, because we've been to all the places pretty much that are within an hour or so. There's also that Spring Villa story that I love to tell. I don't know how many of you've heard it, but Kim, my brother and sister-in-law live in Summerville, Alabama. What's Summerville close to? Because I know Summerville, Alabama, but I don't know exactly where it's at. Anything that's in West Alabama, I'm not real familiar with. It has to be central and south. I mean, up to Birmingham, which is, pretty well central. Like when we lived in Moody, we was right outside of Birmingham. And I'm saying that we did live in Moody, but we lived at a place called Brompton. We lived in Brompton, south of Huntsville. I've been to Huntsville one time. And that was in 1990. That was my only trip to Huntsville. And we've got a lot of exploring left to do, but Tim's still tied down working, so we have to limit it to how far we can go in a day. And our vacations generally have been for the last several years taking us to the east coast of Georgia, but that's changed significantly, and I'm probably going to explore a lot more of these United States just as soon as I can, because I got to go out west. And that's going to be like a different world for me. I already know that's going to be like a different world. Spring Villa, back to Spring Villa. I'll tell y'all the story of Spring Villa, and then I'll tell you the truth about Spring Villa, because when I was a kid, I believed this wholeheartedly, 100%, because it was presented to me as fact. It was false information, but I believed it. Spring Villa, the house in Spring Villa was built, I think, in the 1850s. And it was designed and built by the bridge builder, the famous bridge builder, Horace King. And he built it for, hi, Micah. He built it for his ex-master, because he was a slave. He built it for his ex-master's daughter and her husband. And the story always went, well, thank you, Micah. He loves you too. The story always went that Penn Young, who owned the house, had slaves, and, I don't know if he did or not. I've never found any historical information, but he was a very wealthy man, and he possibly could have owned slaves, because this was during that time. Penn Young went out and made his money. He was a 49er. He was a gold rush 49er out in California, and that's where he went out and made his money. And he didn't actually make a whole lot of money, but he learned about mining. He came back to Spring Villa and he mined, and he owned the mining company. What's it called? It's not the Spring Villa Mining Company. Shawakla. He owned the Shawakla Mining Company. And he learned to mine, and that's how he made all of his money. And then he had this house built. And the story went that he was a very miserly, mean man, and that his slaves were very unhappy with him, which, okay, anybody can see that. But one night he came in the house, and it was such a skinflint, he wouldn't even light a candle to climb the stairs. And there's a circular staircase in Springville House. And he wouldn't light the candle. And there's 2 alcoves on the way up the stairs that hold statues that are, let me put it this way. I've been in the house. I've stood in the alcove, and I was plenty old enough. In fact, I was 20 years old, so I was the same height I am now. So a grown person can stand in the alcove. So one night, one of the slaves who was mad at him hid in the alcove, and it was the night I don't know if he ever lit a candle, but he didn't light his candle. And he went up the stairs, and when he got to the 13th step, I think it was 13th, maybe the 11th, I can't really remember, the slave come out with an axe and cut his head off, and his head rolled down the stairs. So I believe that. I bought that wholeheartedly. I believed it. Well, Penn Young is buried up on the hill across from Spring Villa Mansion. It's quite a walk. You can't breathe when you get to the top of the hill. I know, because I can't breathe. I wasn't sure Tim was going to make it. But we went and saw the grave. He was buried in 1879. And when I looked up his obituary in the Columbus Ledger-Inquirer, the fact is he had a very extended illness, and he died from that. Now, the curse of Spring Villa, in my opinion, comes from the fact that it was Creek Indian land. And this is just my own story, y'all. I'm completely making this up now. It was Creek Indian land, and it was part of the treaty when the Indians were moved out west, and that land then, that's how Penn Young's father-in-law, that's how he acquired it. And it had the spring on it. That's what Springville is famous for. It had the spring on it. And it's the coldest spring there is. And we used to swim in the pool there. And I've done videos on the pool too, because the pool is like an apocalyptic thing when you look at it now. And there's so many memories there. But you can find these videos. We've done Springville, and I tell the story on there too. But I figure if there's a curse, because nobody's on that land. John Godwin, who was Penn Young's father-in-law, and Penn Young, and that was because John Godwin gave him that. Those were the only private landowners of Springville. It's gone through the Boy Scouts, the city of Opelika. It just kept changing hands. The Chihuahua Mining Company owned it, and nobody's ever lived there except them. And the gingerbread house is absolutely magnificent. Jason, my family reunion was at Springville every year. That house scared the mess out of me. Swimming pool was cold as ice, though. You jump in that pool and you can't breathe. I mean, you jump in the pool and you would not be able to breathe when you came back up. And that's when I stayed there. That's when I stood in that alcove. We actually rented that house, my family, and we had a reunion there. And we spent the night in that house. And me and my cousins, my crazy cousins, the walkway to the top floor over the kitchen was still there. So you could go up in the main house and walk across to the little rooms that were there for the Boy Scout camp, where they had all the little cots and they had all the bunk beds in there. And we made our own haunted house, and we scared the mess out of each other. And I was 20. So yeah, I had a lot of fun because I scared them more than they scared me. Penn Young, his son is buried beside him, and he was only in his 20s. I've always wondered what happened with him. I don't know, but the Youngs, they had 3 children. One died in infancy. One is the 20-year-old, and he died not long after Penn Young. And after that, his wife, Mary Young, and the other son, they packed up and went to Texas. They left this area. And that's when they turned it over to the Chihuahua Mining Company. You seen that video, Kim? Yeah, Fish. Horace King built the Salem Shotwell Bridge, and he built the Red Oak Creek covered bridge. Is here in Georgia that me and Tim have gone to, and he and John Godwin came down. They came from, I think, South Carolina. I am not sure about that. It might be Virginia. I don't know. But he and John Godwin, when Horace King was still a slave, came down and they built the first bridge. It's my favorite bridge in Columbus. It's the Dillingham Street Bridge. It's not the same bridge now, but still, what is the Dillingham Street Bridge now is my favorite bridge in Columbus. It crosses the Chattahoochee. They built the first bridge across the Chattahoochee River from Girard, Alabama, which is now Phoenix City, to Columbus, Georgia. And that bridge was burned in the Civil War. And then Horace King built that bridge again. And Horace King is buried in LaGrange, Georgia, and we've been to his grave. I got stung by a yellow jacket at his grave. But he's built quite a few covered bridges, and we've visited quite a few of the covered bridges he's built. And the bridges were good enough, they're still standing. We went recently to the Salem Shotwell covered bridge, or I went recently and did a video again. We've done videos there before. When my grandson was 2 years old, and I didn't know he was the brilliant little person he is, and he's still a brilliant little person, but when he was 2 years old, we were standing there, and he looked up at the sign, and he read it, Salem Shotwell Covered Bridge. And I looked at him, and I said, "Who told you that?" He said, "Nobody, I read it." Y'all, he read it, and I ain't joking, he read it. And that little sweetheart's going to be 12 years old in 2 more days. Yeah. Can't hardly believe it. Time's flying. Well, y'all, it is a little bit after 5. And just like I said the last time I did a live, I'm going to try to do these once a month, at least once a month, maybe more. And I'm going to try to give you more than a day's notice. But I'm not real good at that because I never know what we're going to be doing. But it's time to go to Zaxby's now because we have hungry people and they're ready for supper. And it's time to go to Zaxby's. So I'm going to say thank you all for coming. And I have had a lot of fun. I've enjoyed telling these stories because, I write memoir. It's what I do. So telling these stories, yeah, Zaxby's time. Yeah, here comes the other half of, yeah. The other half who's trying to decide. It's been awesome talking with you. Thanks for the live stream. Enjoy the rest of your day. This was fun. Oh, Hannah said Tim. And Fish said, "Oh yeah, look. You can't see his shirt. He wants to show y'all his shirt. But this is not. It says world's greatest grandpa or papa. World's greatest papa. He's the world's greatest papa. All right. Tim's not antisocial. He's just tired of talking because he's done a lot of talking today. So we're looking forward to June the 16th. And Miley's fussing because she wants to be fed too. So Tim is always styling and profiling. He is. He really is. Yep. Miley can't wait for June 16th either. So anyway, all right, y'all. We've had fun. Bye-bye. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it when y'all come in here. See you next time.